Good evening, Bill, and how are you doing this evening? Maybe I should bring you up so we could talk to you.
Okay. I am moist, James. I am simmering in my own juices. You, of course, unfairly get to live in Southern California and somehow are rarely miserably hot. So, uh, I mean, I guess you've earned it, I guess. But I live in a place that I think amongst major metropolitan areas, a million individuals in that area, or I think is either the third or second in the most extreme in terms of weather between heat and cold. Uh, I think the record high temperature for Chicago is something like 113, which doesn't happen often. But I think the record low is negative 67 or something. So,
which is more likely to happen.
Which is much more likely to happen. So there's only a couple of major metropolitan areas in the United States that can top that. I think Kansas City, luckily or unluckily, their metropolitan area I think might be the winner, or loser, however you put it, in terms of extremes in weather. But we're up there.
Yeah. Well, we're pretty consistent, But yeah, I mean.
Oh yeah, shocker! It's 82 degrees and sunny. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is it Christmas? I mean, and I'm going to have to admit, I do not miss one shovelful. So
yeah, right.
So and I mean, I don't even want to see a sandstorm. Right now, according to a lot of people, we have an avalanche of immigrants coming across the border. But other than that, I think we're pretty safe. There's a few things on here tonight that I want to clear up now that you're here, because I know there's some first names and whatnot that we can throw out. And it's only you and I right now, so I know talking with you for 2 hours. I mean, hey, what the hell,
Just getting warmed up, James.
It's like talking to Emmanuel Stewart. It's like so. But anyway, so I was. Was it your niece or your aunt? Someone graduated? Recently?
I mean, there have been some people who graduated around me recently. They aren't relatives. My daughter is a rising sophomore in college now, so she's not graduating at least immediately from any place.
How's that working out for you? I remember
it's not working out at all for me, James. Not even a little bit. It's awful. I'm getting none of the fun, none of the experience, but all of the expense. So no, it's not working out one teeny tiny bit for this guy. And she's already changed her major once. Yay! So so hoping she sticks with the current major. But yeah, I once again, James, my parents have gotten smarter and more tolerant and more patient as I age. Like, man, my parents were really amazing people. Boy, they put up with a lot. I mean, it really starts to dawn on you as you age. Like, man, wow. The fact that they had never committed anything more than a little felonious assault against me, mostly around the 12, 13 age range, which I understand now so well. Considering that it never got much above that, I think A+ to my late father and my mother for not more thoroughly brutalizing me. Parenthood, man. Wow.
I would rather go with the neighborhood constable than for him to take me home to my grandmother. It's like,
Yeah, well, especially in those days when, I mean, I'm sure they had a children and family services, but no one saw them. Like no one ever saw them. It was a threat. Somebody would say that they were. I'll call them.
They'll give you the phone.
Right. Tell them they can come and collect what's left.
Yeah, I mean, my either my aunt or my grandmother did the hair, did the hair of the social worker that was,
Oh, there we go.
That's all
Hey,
right,
girl, he's doing what? He did what? Oh, no. I'm gonna let you handle that. I'm gonna let you handle it. I'll see you on Wednesday for a wash and set.
But hey, luckily, I saw that on Facebook. But anyway, we're a sports show. Let's
are
let's
a sports show.
let's
But
talk
for the
a
culture,
little.
we had to do that real quick for the culture, Dave.
Yeah. So let's start out talking about the Olympics, of course.
Yes.
And I'm not going to start with the headline, but I'm going to start with this. Is your bench so talented that it's easy to forget a 6'8", 210-pound world champion?
That's a good question, James.
I mean, he did get to play against South Sudan, and maybe that was the reason why he didn't play in the other one from the performance he had there. But anyway, I mean, how do you forget Jason Tatum?
Yeah, well, he hasn't been 210.
You're ahead by 30-some points.
Right. He hasn't been 210 probably since his sophomore year. Well, he didn't have a sophomore year. If he had a sophomore year. But probably since the combine, he's probably about 227, 228 now. But in answer to your question, coaches always have a prepared statement. We've worked out our rotations. We know who we want to play against whom. We're trying to work on matchups. We're feeling out who this team is and what they are. And we want to know, who works best with whom so that later in other situations we know who to play, blah, blah, blah. Right? We've all heard it before. The last time somebody we thought should play didn't play and who was healthy, we've heard it all before. Look, Jason Tatum is one of the probably 5 best basketball players in the world, right? Yeah, I think that's probably true. Probably the 5. I was just double checking my math. Currently playing, one of the 5 best active basketball players in the world. So it's not
currently there are 3 of those 5 are ahead of him on the team.
Right. That's the downside of being an American, James. I promise you, if he was in Great Britain, he'd be getting all the play. If he was in Turkey, I mean, he would be everything. Nobody else would touch the ball. So that's the thing. America, though no longer, unbeatable, right? No longer is America unbeatable in basketball, right? You and I both are old enough to remember 72. While it was controversial and while there was some very funny things that went on, the fact that it was that close lets you know that the world was catching up. And of course, it was a bunch of college kids playing against, military members of the Russian military, but who's, it just happened their MOS was hooping, but still the fact is that it showed you that, the world was catching up. And then we allowed obviously the dream team and we distanced ourselves from the world again. And then the world caught back up again, James, only faster than the last time. So it is now
I'm blaming it all on them damn Spurs, man. I'm blaming it all on Pop.
Pop holds some, but also David Stern. David Stern said, when he remember, the NBA was about America's number 4 sport when he takes it over. Boxing was ahead, right? Yeah, at the time he takes over, boxing's ahead of basketball. You talk to somebody who's 20 years old, they'll think you're insane when you say that more people watch boxing than basketball. But it wasn't that long ago that was true, James. You and I both remember when the NBA playoffs would be on tape delay. You'd be watching them at 11:30 at night. 11:30 at night. That's in my lifetime, like well into my lifetime. Yeah. So it's not that long ago that basketball was fighting for people's attention. In America, this place that created the sport, now they've gone now you can get high quality basketball in Israel, Japan, Turkey, Iraq. I mean, name a place, right?
Evidently, you can get it in South Sudan, even
You can
though
definitely get it. You can definitely get it in South Sudan, which is only
even though the U.S. Even though we did get revenge,
we did. But I think South Sudan as a nation has only existed for what is it, 8 years?
Well, I mean, it's their first ever Olympics. So I mean,
obviously, if the nation didn't exist 8 years ago,
I mean, as someone, I think it might have been Don that said he didn't even know there was a South Sudan.
Well, there hasn't been one for very long. I mean, he's not wrong in terms of, I mean,
yeah, but like it has, even though the separation caused a lot of news itself, but that's another subject altogether. But it is like you said, like I have actually said that my final three would be the USA, France, and Canada. Now, that doesn't say that, like Germany's my dark horse, and I'm not saying that U.S. is necessarily going to win the gold. I'm just saying that I think they'll be in the discussion.
Oh yeah, no, they'll be. I mean, it's no longer automatic, as we talked about. Even with professionals playing, it's no longer automatic.
Yeah, I mean,
they'll be on the podium.
I think I think I asked the question last week. Like, who did you have more confidence winning the gold, the men or the women? And it was almost 100% the women.
I'm with that. 100% the women. Yes, 100%.
But staying with the Olympics, though, the Timberwolves guard Anthony Edwards said that he'd not lose 21-0 to anyone on the women's U.S. table tennis team. Now, Steph Curry and the women's team, they disagree. Now, who are you putting your money on?
Well, okay, I love his confidence. I love Anthony Edwards' confidence. He doesn't understand the sport they're playing versus what he's played table tennis before. He's an excellent athlete, but he's not playing the sport they play. Have you seen what they can make that thing do? Where it's headed off the court and then it curves and comes back in? Have you seen what they do? He's not ready for that. He doesn't know what he's talking about. However, I love the confidence. I love that he thinks that he can hold it. I bet he says he could go 3 rounds with whoever is in his weight class in boxing. I bet he believes he can hold his own in judo. Like, I love the confidence. He's wrong. He's 100% wrong about all this. As athletic as he is, put him out there with those world-class high jumpers. He's not going to finish in the top 100. But he thinks he can compete with them. I love that in him. That's what you want. You want your best player to believe he's the best at everything, everywhere he goes. That's what you want. Hey. We all remember, speaking of table tennis, we all remember the famous Buzz Peterson story the year that he was rooming with Michael Jordan, where he beat Michael Jordan a couple of times in a row playing table tennis, and then Mike kept saying, we got to keep playing, because Mike had to play until he won.
Until he won.
At 3 o'clock in the morning, Buzz Peterson's like, well, I guess I'm about to let Mike win. I need some sleep. So eventually he's like, yeah, Mike, you win, baby. You got it. I gotta go. You love that. You want your best player to be that person. That's what you want. I love that. But he's so wrong. He wouldn't touch a single one of the balls coming back from them.
I watched some of the tape from the women's table tennis.
The spin they can put on that ball, man. The things they can make it do, it's crazy.
Like you said, I mean, when you look, like just 20 years ago at the sport of table tennis, and then you look at it now.
If he says in the 1950s, if it's the 1956 Olympics, he might be right. But it's not the 1956 Olympics, James. He couldn't touch these people.
Yeah. Hey. Speaking of confidence, Shannon Sharp and Ocho Cinco promised each U.S. runner that brings home the gold 25 G's. Now, Shannon says if they break the world record, he'll add another 50 G's to that. Now, who do you think would be most likely to cash in on this gold mine?
You mean in which event? I mean, a lot of
Listen,
people are going to cash in. He's
no,
going to be paying out a lot of cash.
he said gold and track and field. So the first thing I thought
A
about
lot of
was
events. I
the
hope he's been saving.
the first thing I thought about was the relay teams. You know, that's
Is he
for
counting like pole vaulting, shot put, javelin, all that? Oh my
he,
God. Well, I hope Uncle Shay Shay has been very, very good about his investments and saving. That's a lot of events, James.
yeah, you know, and another 50 G's for a world record.
There'll be a couple of those sprinkled in. So yeah, he's probably looking at, when it's all said and done, somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 and some odd $1,000 when it's all said and done.
That's about what I thought too. Like I said, you know, and I'm counting 3 Olympic, the 4x100, the 4x400. I mean,
Right.
you know,
Noah Lyles might break a record. I mean, it's
Noah Lyles might break a record,
a couple of the women are going to break
split.
records. Yeah, he's yeah.
Well,
Like I said, I mean, I'm sure he's going to be okay, but he might have to cut back on his, I don't know, Cuban cigar consumption or something, because this might get expensive.
yeah, certainly could, certainly could. So you can take that silver and shove it. The U.S. women finally got revenge.
Yeah, we knew that was coming.
Simone and the U.S. women, they dominated the events, bringing home the gold. And I mean, they dominated. It wasn't even
it was a bit of a blowout. Yeah. The competition was for silver. That was really what it was. It was competition for silver. Everybody knew America. I mean, when they brought back that number of super elite top tier gymnasts, I mean, it would be like, imagine somehow you managed to get like on the same team, like Jerry West in his prime, Larry Bird in his prime, Magic in his prime, and just for giggles, Wilt Chamberlain, right? Are all on the same team. That's kind of what that 4 was like. I mean, the best balance beam gymnast, maybe in recent history, the best floor exercise gymnast in the history of the planet ever, the best all-around gymnast also in the history of the planet ever was on that team. And quietly, our best floor exercise person actually wasn't able to go. So
she'll be back. She'll be back for the next Olympics.
Right. Ended up having to fill in for her and killed it. So like we were killing it with our second best people in some of the events. They could have, I mean, it wasn't, as you said, it wasn't close. The gap widened, right? They were so pissed about the last Olympics. They all came back. I mean, I thought one of them might cut back. I would have been surprised if 2 came back. When they all came back, I was like, well, that's it. That's it. Well, once again, who's here for the silver?
Oh, and by the way, we must remember Sue's last corner when she was talking about Miss Ledecky and her coach. So we congratulate her on not only just her win, but she also established a new world record.
Yep. So, well, Katie Ledecky is going to go down as one of the greatest Olympians, regardless of sport of all time, and should. If it weren't for the fact that Michael Phelps exists, and you and I are not remember Mark Spitz, but she'd be talked about as one of the greatest American swimmers, regardless of gender, in the history of the planet. Katie Ledecky is doing things that should not be possible to do, and is doing them, and still, like, she's not done being good. You know what I mean? Like, she's 27. Conceivably, she could come back one more time, James. I mean, how crazy is that? How crazy is that? I remember when she was the kid, right? I mean, like, what was she? Let me say, do the math again. 15? What was she? How old was she the first time? 15, right? 15, I think, her first Olympics, right? And she was the kid. She was the one, the gee whiz, the whatever, back when,
Yeah.
She was this. I mean, she was everybody's little sister, basically, right? Now she's the queen, man. She's the greatest, one of the greatest Olympians we'll ever see, ever. But yeah, she set yet another world record because why not? Why not? Kathleen Genevieve Ledecky is one of the greatest athletes our nation has produced, and deserves to be remembered as such. And deserves to be remembered as such. To be as great as she was, as early as she was in her career, and to be able to maintain it, to be able to stay at that level for this number of years. I mean, I was off by a couple of years. She was, no, I was right. She was 15 in London, right? And won a gold medal in the 800-meter freestyle. It should be pointed out that is a pain race. For those who are unfamiliar with what it's like to swim 800 meters as fast as you can, the last half of it, your entire body is screaming in agony. She's 15, and she's smoking people.
Run. I compared it to running a 440 on the curve.
Yeah. I mean, I've competed in the 800 before. My best time was a 159.3, and I thought I was going to die. Literally, I thought I might die. I was breathing so hard, James, that people thought something was wrong with me. I'm laying on the ground. I'm gasping. Everything hurts. And they're doing it in water. So it's crazy and nuts and crazy.
And one of the things, I was talking to one of my physical therapists about was just before she set the record, the day before there was a headline about the pool being too slow.
Huh.
But they did get some swimmers in the Seine. They said it didn't taste too, it didn't taste well. It didn't. But they did manage to get some swimmers in the Seine. Let's see. Where do we all go here?
Yeah. I just want to throw one last thing out here. She is broken in her career, and it's not over yet. I should like to point out to everybody, she's not done. She's broken, I think, is it maybe now 17, at least 16 world records. It might be now 17 world records. And she's not done. Like, it is insane and crazy that a person who may have one more Olympics left in them has done what she's done. So we may never see, well, I shouldn't say never see, we will. I mean, records are made to be broken. But it may be a minute before we see another athlete with her combination of talent, drive to be dominant for so long, in mental and physical endurance to be this good for this long. And so when Michael Phelps and all these other people come and throw the bouquets at her feet, they do it knowing that they're seeing a rare quality and a off the charts quantity of athletic performance in this one person. And unless you have some way of gauging what she's doing at this point in her career, it's difficult because it's not that you lose the ability to swim that well, it's that you lose the desire to train that hard. If you talk to anybody who's been a swimmer at that level, they say, oh, I could have kept going, right? It's not like football where, your body says, oh, you break down. No, you could keep going into your 30s, but nobody wants to train like that in their 30s. That's the issue. Yeah. Who wants to swim 4 and 5 hours a day in your 30s, 6 days a week? But if she has the drive to continue, she'll keep winning.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll see. Like I said, Tarazi, I think has, she's been, but then, like you say, that's nothing like swimming. But just to get a quick touch on it here, little NCAAF here. Davo is kind of irked again, and he's irked about the portal.
Yep.
But he's also irked about the impact that these new rules and new conferences are going to have on walk-ons.
Yep.
I mean, he was a walk-on himself.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things that, we can say, like, maybe you need to come up and, to the modern ages. But I think I kind of agree with Dabo on this. I mean, it kind of takes away, one less opportunity for an unknown. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, here's the one thing that Dabo Swinney and I have in common. We were both walk-ons. He was better because he walked on in Alabama and eventually actually played. I can count literally the number of plays I was in my collegiate career, and have clear, sharp memories of every single one because there weren't that many. And I was at a school that was then at the time D2 and later made its way up to FBS. But that's the one thing I think we do agree on. I would like to see more opportunities for walk-ons and not fewer opportunities for walk-ons. And walk-ons got hurt a little bit anyway when you had the players staying the extra COVID year, and added on that you had what happened with the transfer portal. Now you had teams for a little while they had like an exemption, whatever, to carry extra players, but they got, I think last year might have been the last year they were allowed extra spots on the roster. So now this guy who's coming in to transfer in is pushing maybe a guy that might have been a starter or a second stringer down from second to third or from starting to second. And the ripple effect means that walk-on that you talked about, now there'll still be some walk-ons who will manage to make an impact, but it was always hard, and now it becomes even harder to become a walk-on that actually sees the field, because the process of putting your team together happens even later than before, right? There are teams that were adding guys in June, right? I mean, there are guys getting added to rosters in June, James. That would have been unthinkable, well, literally 3 years ago. I mean, you have to go back that far. You would want everything kind of set by that. I mean, spring game used to be about figuring it all out and then kind of boom, right? Now, after spring game, there's guys coming in onto rosters who are going to end up being starters or second stringers. So you're figuring out what your team looks like, and there's no preseason in college football. So you're still figuring out who your team is sometimes a week or two into the season, not just in the sort of conceptual figuring out your team, but literally figuring out your team, like the rotations, who position, who's playing what, is going to happen sometimes a week or two into the season because guys are getting added so late to the roster.
There was another statistic that I was looking at, and that was the number of eighth graders that are already being recruited by colleges. Bill, and they're doing my era, I mean, maybe a sophomore, maybe a junior that with a couple of college scouts coming in to look at him. Bill, 18, and he's already being looked at by scouts. Now, is that attributed to the evolution of youth, or are we pushing, are we expecting too much too soon? I mean, at eighth grade, he might not even like football.
Yep.
When he's a junior.
It's a combination of things. So we all remember when David Sills was offered a scholarship to USC at 12 years old, right? We all remember that when Lane Kiffin, and of course, ironically, David Sills, who did play in the NFL, might still be in the NFL, but was a wide receiver by the time he gets to the NFL, right? He ends up transferring a couple of times, finishes up at West Virginia as a wide receiver. But so this guy was a quarterback, right? Was supposed to be the best seventh grade quarterback in the country, which is one of those things that when you hear yourself saying out loud the best seventh grade quarterback in the country, you realize, one, we've lost our way as a nation, and two, what an utterly meaningless thing that is to say, because as you just pointed out, that kid might be a basketball player in 2 years. They might be chasing girls and playing in a rock band. I mean, anything could happen. So like it is silly. Part of it is silliness. But I'm going to give you 4 letters, HYPE. With the coming of social media, James, there's always been hype surrounding the recruiting process, right? You and I both remember when national recruiting first became a thing. And before the late 1970s, there was no such sense as national recruiting, right? You
recruit your area.
You do your area. You might know the next area over. I grew up in southeastern Virginia. We might know who some of the good players were in South Carolina, North Carolina, maybe the DMV area like Maryland, Northern Virginia, DC, maybe, right? And that was it. That was it. So I was really starting to fall in love with college football when the first time somebody published that I know of a list of the best, and that was, of course, Tom Lemming, a list of the best, 1979. Those are the best high school players in the nation. This guy quit his job, decided to start, the Tom Lemming report. And he picked a great year because 1979 is all of the 1983 quarterbacks, right? Our high school seniors, right? So it's Jim Kelly, it's Todd Blackledge, it's Ken O'Brien, it's all of them, right? The whole list. Elway, Dickerson, Craig James, Bruce Smith. Like he timed it perfectly. It's one of the great high school recruiting classes in the history of the planet. So he launched the Lemming Report at the really good time. And so you would see Street and Smith, you would see the Lemming Report, a few other things. But even then, it was like people would see or hear, some of it wasn't even see, be word of mouth. There's no internet really yet. So
yeah.
So guys are driving around in their vans, literally, trying to get the kids, and then they're talking to coaches. Well, who do you think's good this year? And taking notes, right? I remember a thrill for me was a guy I grew up playing with when I was a little guy back in North Carolina. I saw him when I was looking through Street and Smith and had a list of the top high school wide receivers in the country.
Okay.
and it's like, oh, wait. I said, how many Clarkston Hines can there be in the world? Sure enough, it was my old friend Clarkston Hines. Shout out to Clarkston Hines, who at one point was the leading receiver in ACC history when he was playing for Steve Spurrier at Duke. But we grew up a little bit together in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. The first time I ever played football in my life was for either the Little Jets or the Little Dolphins. He thinks they were Little Dolphins. I thought we were Little Jets. But our coach is named Bernie League. I don't know if he's still alive, but shout out to Bernie if he's still alive. But the point is that I was like thrilled, like, hey, Clarkston Hines. He was like, it's a little tiny thing. Wide receiver, 6 feet, 160 pounds, Clarkston Hines, the Bowles School, Jacksonville, Florida. That was it. And I was just thrilled. It's like, oh, I wonder if that's my friend. Sure enough, it was. So that was it. You would read. They'd have a little bit more on like the top players. And then everybody outside those top 50, top 100, it would just literally be a line. The high school they went to, height, weight, which is usually a guess at most, and then and position.
Position, yeah.
That was it. That was as good as it got for years, James. And then in the 90s, you had a bunch of the scouting services, National Scouting Services launched, right? Scouting Inc. and a few others came along, and then ESPN got into the scouting game, right, around that same time. And then when the internet comes along, this is when the worm turns, James. Now, instead of driving around in your van for 7 months or whatever this people were doing, like Tom Lemming was doing, or you start driving around in your van in the summer and drive around your van from June until December, just trying to watch as many players as possible. Now you have you're able to talk via internet, connect via internet to players and coaches all around the country, and you're able to position your people. You have your Texas guy who's reporting to you. You have your California guys reporting to you. So instead of one or two people driving around in vans all year, you now are building a network of people who are reporting from Western Pennsylvania, the Tidewater area, North Florida, South Florida, West Florida.
And as you said, the whole game changed, kind of after that.
And I'll land on this. So you went from having one or two or three scouting services. Now there's 3 or 4 in every major city, right? Right. So they aren't all large scouting services, but without thinking hard, I can name 20 scouting services that are looking at high school kids. And 20 big ones. And I can never name all the little ones that come and go, but there's so many of these scouting services now that they're all looking for a way to differentiate themselves from the others. And the best way to do that is to scout younger and younger kids, right? Because by the time they're 16, everyone's already talked about and written about whatever. Now you got to scout, 12, then it's 11, then it'll be 10. At some point, you're going to read about the top third grader in the country. Mark my words.
Yeah. Hey, yeah. Everybody gets a participation trophy, right?
Well, not if you're the top third grade in the country, you get an NIL deal.
See, there you go. There you go. And like I said, change sports when he's 6. So yeah. No NFL here. John Elway. John Elway said passing that on Josh Allen was possibly his biggest mistake as Broncos GM. Possibly? Can you think of a bigger one?
He's possibly right. They sunk money and time into people like Brock Osweiler, Drew Lock, the Russell Wilson experiment. Though I think he was out the door by the time they brought Russ in.
Yeah, he was way out.
But his fingerprints are all over the Brock Osweiler disastrous signing, and Drew Lock was on his watch, and there was from Memphis, drafted in the number 19 overall, in and out of the league like that. Oh my gosh, I can see him in my mind. Mustache. What was that kid's name? But yeah, they drafted a who's who of who at quarterback for a while there, James.
Did they draft Ryan Leaf?
No, they didn't draft Ryan Leaf. No, that was San Diego. That was
that was us. Yeah, that was them.
But they had a bad run. I guess what I'm saying in quarterback. They had a bad run. They had a bad run there for a while, and they clearly now Josh Allen wasn't a sure thing. Like people can pretend they knew that Josh Allen was going to work out, but that was an emotional thing that they knew. Josh Allen, if you study him, if you look at him in terms of historical precedent, particularly in the time in which he was a prospect coming out, there was a lot of reasons to believe he might not make it. Paxton Lynch, that's the name I was trying to remember. So yeah, they had a bad run, I guess is the point I was making. It's like, obviously they drafted Tim Tebow, though he had that one brief and shining moment. That didn't exactly work out. I mean, Jay Cutler looks better and better as time goes on. Heck, I mean, even old neckbeard.
Neckbeard.
Orton. Kyle Orton is starting to look pretty good by comparison. So they had a bad run, I guess is what I'm saying. Oh, Brian Greasy, where are you now? So they for a team that was being run by a Hall of Fame quarterback, they did not do a great job of assessing that position, James. And while I can understand, I mean, I was a person that did not have a first round grade on Josh Allen. I'm not going to run from my analysis of him. He had some bad games, and people can make all the excuses they want about, well, there wasn't great talent around him. He's playing in the WAC, and the talent that was around him was just fine compared to the other talent around the conference. I mean, he played with Brian Hill, Tanner Gentry, and 2 of the Hollister brothers. There's a lot of quarterbacks in that conference that would have killed to play with those guys. So I don't buy some of the excuses people made for him. He had some really bad games, and he got better a little bit in some areas, but he threw a lot of bad picks all throughout his collegiate career and even in the early part of his pro career.
Yeah,
now that Brian Daboll,
he hasn't stopped. I mean, but you also, like you said, when you look back, that had to be. He says possibly. I says it was the worst, but we'll see.
Well, but there's no guarantee he becomes, the guy we're seeing now if he goes to Denver. That's the other piece of the puzzle, is that Brian Daboll and the coaching staff that was there around him would not have been there in Denver. So do we know he would? Well, yeah, I mean, we're playing.
No, I mean, yeah,
the what if game.
it's kind of, like you assume, if Peyton Manning, is your mentor, that you know how to throw a football. So I mean, I mean, you would assume that if John Elway had been his mentor, then maybe he might have been at a higher plane. But as you say, it might have been a different system. He might not have thrived under that system, but hey, it was one of those things. But we're going to stay on quarterbacks here for a minute.
And sorry, they left the WAC by the time Josh Allen got there. They were in the Mountain West by then. But the point still stands. He played with 4 guys amongst position players, amongst the position skill players that at least suited up in the NFL. And most of the guys who were Mountain West quarterbacks couldn't say that.
Yeah, that's very true. Mountain West. But let's talk about Tua. Tua got his bag. He got shown the money. The Finns gave him a 4-year, $212 million, $212.4 million contract.
That's 4 counts because he's going to need to, do some tips.
Yeah. 167 of it was guaranteed.
Yeah, that's the part that counts, James, because he may never see 212, but he's guaranteed to see the 167.
Yes. So that puts him in about the range of 53.1 mil a year. What do you think?
Not bad work if you can get it.
right around the range where he should be.
Well, what do you mean by should? And this is what people have to remind themselves. They're used to thinking that it's a meritocracy, not a chronotocracy.
Well, see, when I say should, because we're no longer, it's kind of got like the military. If you make this rank, you are allotted this much money.
Yep.
You might not do the work that it takes for you to make this rank, but if you achieve that rank, you get paid. So
correct.
Tua has made the playoffs his last 2 years. And when you consider what the Dolphins were before, and you consider what the scale is for a starting quarterback now, that's what I mean by the money that he deserves.
Right.
He's in other words, he's got to that tax bracket.
Right. If you are above the median line NFL starting quarterback, you're going to get paid. So back to my original point. It's not a meritocracy. It's a chronotocracy. When does your contract come up? Right. If his contract had come up 2 years ago, he would be looking at what everybody else is getting paid going, right? Curses. It's just all about timing, James. And guess what? Somebody's going to make 3 or 4 whatever per year ahead of him. Very simple.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. I got some thoughts about that one, boy. We're going to talk about that as we go on. But speaking of quarterbacks, of course, that Jordan Love also got paid. He got 4 years. He got $220 million. He got $75 million signing bonus, plus $155 million in guarantees.
Yep.
Which brings him up to approximately $55 million a year.
Right. Well, once again, the number that matters is the 225 or so total guarantee. That's what matters, and that's what makes you happy when he's whistling his way to work, when he's the guy who just can't wait to get to practice. That's why, James. That's why. Hey guys, Man, lovely weather we're having. Yeah, it's easy to want to go to work in those situations. Here's
Well,
one thing
Tua,
with Jordan Love. I was a Jordan
Tua
Love guy.
didn't Tua announced his at practice, wasn't it? Huddle up, guys. Look at the bad guy.
Mhm. So I mean, interest of full disclosure, I was a Jordan Love guy. I was a Jordan Love guy. I liked him a lot at Utah State. I was a big Chucky Keaton guy back in the day, who unfortunately got undone by injuries. He's coaching now, but I now had another favorite Utah State quarterback. Once he arrived there, he showed me a little bit of everything. By the time he got to his redshirt sophomore season, I was sold. I'd seen everything I needed to see. He had shown touch, anticipation, arm strength, athletic ability, mental and physical toughness. I was 100% all in. Like, yeah, this guy is going to be a top tier NFL starter. I was a big Jordan Love guy. I never doubted for a minute that he would be really good. And he's going to be good for a long time. I mean, I hate to sort of say it this way, but it's clear the Packers have kind of figured out the quarterback position, James. They seem to have, they may not have everything figured out, but they've got that figured out. Between the Bart Starr and Favre thing, they had a little bit of a gap where they kind of wandered around lost in the wilderness. Lynn Dickey unfortunately just couldn't stay healthy, but but the other guys, I mean, John Mikowski, had a few fun moments, but the others in that time period between Brian Bartlett Starr and Brett Favre, whew, kind of rough. But they've figured it out since then. They've had a nice, clean, warm handoff from Favre to Aaron Charles Rodgers and Aaron Charles Rodgers to Jordan Love. They clearly have figured something out.
Okay. But so far, they still only have one playoff win between the three of them? I mean, between the two of them, I'm sorry. Because Favre, I think, had how many?
Yeah, well, Favre and Rodgers won one Super Bowl each. And while it sounds funny saying just one Super Bowl, because there's franchises who still don't have one, right? So, if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, I'm with you. We share that. But I'm saying if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, the just one Super Bowl thing doesn't ring the same way to them, right? If you're not whining so much. I mean, they would shut that whole state down.
To be them, right?
If they won a Super Bowl, James, they would shut the entire state of Minnesota down for now. Our friend would probably just ascend straight to heaven, right? He would just simply float straight up. They've been close. They've been there. They've played in the game before, but frankly, they've never even had one that was terribly close. They've usually gotten beaten up pretty badly in Super Bowls. So when we're criticizing, oh, you just won one, it rings kind of hollow to some people. But Jordan Love is the kind of player you pay that kind of money.
But but if you're talking to Muhammad Ali and you only have one heavyweight championship, I mean, I'm just saying.
100% get what you're saying, but there are a lot of great players who, I mean, obviously,
wish,
there's a long list of great players who don't have a ring. So I'm a little careful about criticizing people for just winning one. But yes, Jordan Love is the kind of player. Ironically, though he's the younger prospect, younger player, there's fewer questions, a little younger. He hasn't played as much as Tua, but there's fewer questions, right? People don't wonder as many things about Jordan Love as they do about Tua.
Well, see, the thing, Bill, and I understand what you're saying, but when I talk to most people, I've been a Steelers fan longer than most of them have been living. So
correct.
I puff my chest out, and I still talk about, the little boy and Mean Joe Green commercial, even though I don't drink Coke. But you know, uh, but speaking of big contracts, Bears wide receiver DJ Moore, he got a big extension, 4 years, 110 million, the largest in Bears franchise history. Now his contract includes, and it's what is it, 82.68 million guaranteed. Like you said, I mean, that has to have something to do with the tax bracket. But you've been watching DJ Moore. I remember you talking about him long before he was drafted.
I was a big fan of his in college.
Yes, I remember.
I loved his route running ability. I loved the fact that he would go even into sort of congested areas, take hits, and come away with the ball. And while he's not Debo Samuel exactly, he's really good after the catch. Like, he breaks a fair number of tackles. Before he was too valuable to use on as a return guy, he was a really good return specialist early on. And there's not much he can't do except be tall. I mean, he's got everything else. If you want a guy who's 6'3", 6'4", he's not your guy, but he's got everything else. Everything a receiver his size can give you, DJ Moore gives you. Everything a receiver that size can give.
Another wide receiver. Well, this isn't a wide receiver, but I do want to talk about him just a little bit here, and that's actually because this is a position that you and I, kind of share, and I mean, this is one of the, being one of those guys that watched George Atkinson and Jack Tatum coming up in that era. My job as a cornerback was to separate your ass from the ball. Now we have guys on islands, and there's a lot of finesse and whatnot. Now we have this kid with the Texans, a rookie. His name is Kamari, nickname Locksmith, Mr. Lassiter.
Yep.
And he's making a little noise out here in the Texans camp. I got to ask you about. I know you certainly have scouted the young man.
Oh yeah.
How do you place him as possibly taking a starting job in the Texas secondary?
Well, I think he will eventually. I don't know if he gets it right away. And remember, I always try to. Every year we do this over and over again. You could just play the recording. I would like to remind people that what you're seeing right now is training camp, and then eventually, right after that, preseason. And the things that training camp and preseason have in common is the offense and defense have pretty much told each other what they're going to do. So it's easier for a young player to play free and play smart when there's no adjustments being made, there's no disguising, there's no trickery. It gets a lot harder once people start game planning, calling audibles, changing things up, disguising their looks. So I do think he's eventually a starter. Could be even as soon as this year, but I don't think he's a day one starter.
But he is playing in a conference that might make it it might give him a little more playing time. Do you agree with that?
I mean, it makes it, yes. I mean, it makes it a little more likely. But like I said, I generally.
Where did you have the young man ranked as compared to where he was drafted?
I could pop up my top 300 from that year and answer that. But I know he's in my top 50. I don't remember exactly. I think he was probably in the upper 30s, 37, 38. So I think it's somewhere around there.
Okay.
But there's a lot to like about him. He came from a really good program, obviously. They put a lot on him. They fairly mentally demanding kind of program, and still very young, right? He won't turn 22 until January, so you'll love that about him. He's a very young prospect. He's physically gifted, and Kamar Quincy Lassiter is one of those guys that you can tell is going to have a long, 12, maybe 12 plus year career. Partially, once again, due to being so young, picks up things quickly. Good athlete. Like there's all the things you want are there.
Yeah. Well, what were some of his weaknesses if you had him ranked that low?
I would say at times he could be a little too aggressive, because he could bite up sometimes on things, but all of the stuff was teachable stuff. There's nothing there you thought, oh, that's not something that can be overcome. He had a lot of, basically, when you combine being young, athletic, smart, and tough, those are all things that people like in the NFL, James. So I'm not surprised. Like I said, I'm not surprised. Kamar Lassiter is exactly the kind of player that NFL teams covet. When you get a guy, once again, this is an old draft. There were some 23, 24, and even a couple of 25-year-olds in this last draft class. He's 3, 2, 3, sometimes 4 years younger than some of the guys that are drafted. So you're getting a little extra bit of that guy's prime, where some of these older players, you're not getting. You're going to lose a year or two, sometimes even 3, of their playing prime because they were in college so long. So there's a lot to argue for him being really good and being good for a long time.
Okay. I'm gonna stay kind of out here in the West. Talk a little bit about the Chargers and their scheme of things. Will this be the year that J.K. Dobbins starts ahead of Gus Edwards?
Well, he's done it before, but he kept getting hurt. Here's my bold prediction is that he has 12 starts this season. That is my very bold prediction is that he has 12 starts. I think J.K. Dobbins is the healthiest he's been in a long time, partially because I think a lot of those touches he gets are going to be more in the passing game, the running game. Not that they won't run the ball because they got Coach Harbaugh. They're going to run the ball. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's going to be just busting it up. Bob 30. That kind of. I don't think you're going to see a whole bunch of like 22 dive. I think they're going to run the ball, but they're not going to be, Bo Schembechler about it. I think they're going to integrate a good number of touches in the pass game. I think he's going to, get touches where
he's lost Eckler. He's lost both of his wide receivers, right? Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are both gone now, right?
Right.
So, when you take away those 3 out of the passing game, I kind of like Gus Edwards in the passing game, but I'm wondering who fits into Harbaugh's scheme. And this is, as you know, this is the West Coast, and just the way that they moved from San Diego to LA can tell you how quick the sports crowd can turn on you, especially when you're competing with you have the Rams, that have definitely won a world championship since you have. So what do you do? Are you still the 4th best team in the West?
Here's my sort of San Diego prediction. I think they end up at least a game over 500. Not all the Harbaugh effect. Stop me, you've heard this before. They've often been snake bitten by injuries. I think that lets up for them a little bit. I think they're a 9-8 team this year. I think that they narrowly missed the playoffs.
So one thing that I've kind of observed about the San Diego Chargers when they were here. So I moved out here in 2003. They still had a few great players. But I always thought that it was a group of individuals, and they never were a team. Your thoughts?
Well, you brought up military. One of the big things, and I don't know what kind of schools or classes you had once you got out of AIT, but one of the things they train you or give you blocks of instruction on when you go through officers candidacy and then later some of the developmental training is about unit cohesion, right? How do you quickly bond together individuals that may or may not even have a lot in common? Here's what I will say. Once again, we talk about Harbaugh and being corny and weird and whatever, but what he's really great at, what allows him to take the players he gets and win with them almost no matter what, is that he knows how to build, how to get people to group together, work for each other. He understands, bonding people, that unit cohesion. He understands letting people know that they're valued, pushing them and expecting a lot from them, but making sure that they know that there's a lot coming back to them also. So yeah, I don't think I could be wrong, but I think they're, like I said, one game above 500.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Oh, another team out west here, the Seahawks. We have a young rookie, Mr. Jake Bobo, that's making a little noise out here. But then we also,
I think it's his second year.
Yeah, and then we also have the 10-year veteran Tyler Lockett on the other side.
Yep.
And then you also got the news that I believe, maybe Demetrius is in the morning, but Rashad Penny retired. Isn't he a Michigan State guy, I believe?
Yep.
So what's up with the Seahawks this year? If you place the Chargers at 9-8, what are the Seahawks? And
well, there's obviously different conferences. Things that I think we'll see from the Seahawks. I think you will see a team that plays it on offense fairly close to the vest for the most part, taking the occasional risk, but plays it mostly pretty close to the best on offense. Takes a few more risks on defense, but not. Okay, so when Pete Carroll was voluntold to retire, he took some things with him, right? Part of it was his whole Capitaholic, relentlessly upbeat mannerisms and, taking guys for, paintballing or whatever. Like he did a lot of, we talked about unit cohesion and team building before. He took that stuff super seriously, and he learned a lot of that in his college years. Though he started out as an NFL assistant. Well, not started out as, let me rephrase that. He climbed the ladder fairly quickly. Some people too young to remember young Pete Carroll in the NFL, but he made his way from college into the pro ranks early. And by the time he was 36 or something, his name was being bandied about as a future NFL head coach. He eventually gets a head coaching job, and then of course is unceremoniously replaced by Bill Parcells, and then he gets another head coaching job and is unceremoniously replaced by Bill Belichick. This guy can't win for losing. So it was Parcells again, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Parcells again. Parcells replaced him twice. So yeah, that's rough. That's a tough way to go. So he goes back to college ranks. Obviously, when he gets it back the next time, he's fully the Pete Carroll that younger people know, the people think of. But he's going to have to squeeze a lot of effort and scheme and whatever. I mean, the new coaches they have, Dave Canales, they have some good coaches. They still have some good coaches. They lost some guys, right, who've left to go become head coaches, like their offensive coordinator. They've lost some. They obviously, moved on from their head coach we just talked about. So some of it I don't know because I've never seen this version of the Seahawks before, right? The Seahawks coaching staff is, after being slightly different, over a decade or so span, with mostly keeping a lot of the same people, Now it's a bunch of new people, some of whom have held the same position on other teams, and a lot of whom are new to this level of coaching. They may have coached, this position before, but not in the NFL. So they're a bit of a mystery, but I don't think they're a winning. I don't think it's a winning. What do you call it? I don't think it's a winning season.
Okie doke. Well, so it's the 49ers or bust, basically, is what you're telling me out there.
Well, the 49ers are still the most complete team in the West, and that has not changed. Mike McDonald will eventually get Seattle back there. He's a smart, really smart, hardworking young man, and frankly has a lot of some things, though not quite as upbeat. He has a lot of things in common with Pete Carroll. The Rams are fascinating. That they were one of my surprise teams last year. I didn't expect them. I look back, like I didn't think they'd be as good as they were. That team looked like it was, for lack of a better putting it, there for reorganizational purposes, so they could come back the next year with a different everything, right? And then take a look at where they are. They, despite the fact they did not have a great year, they still outplayed the expectations most people have of them. A lot of people were predicting they might end up with the number one pick overall.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it's going to be very interesting to see how things do play out. But talking about how things do play out, I have to talk about my favorite team. It seems that they submitted another offer to CD Lamb Friday. So far, we haven't heard about CD being signed. Haven't heard much about Michael Parsons. At least I haven't. Maybe you, in your sports roamings, have. But the reason why I was pointing out those annual salaries was because Dak is also on that list. And the more that you're paying these other quarterbacks, the more that Dak is going to expect. And I asked, maybe it was a month ago, would Dak be the first $60 million quarterback? So with CD unsigned and Micah unsigned, are they saving this money to give Dak the bag? Or will we see Dak in free agency? Your thoughts?
So
I mean, because I'm sure you know the salary cap also down to the penny.
yeah, well, the salary cap will continue to increase. But people have pointed out that when you say, "Oh, why don't we have quality O-line depth? Oh, why don't we have this? Why don't we have that?" Sometimes it comes down to when you do sink 20-something%, or whatever of your salary cap in a player, as opposed to spreading it around a bit. As I said before, the bill comes due. You can't dine and dash. At some point you've got to pay what you owe, and I'm frankly not bothered by that. The fact is that there are people far worse off though than he. And if somebody truly does want the help, I hope they do consult with some of the local resources.
So does Dak get that 60 million? Oh, I think Bill.
Yeah.
So, does Dak get the 60 million or not?
No, Dak, no. They're going to sign. CeeDee Lamb is going to be the guy that's. And once again, it should be pointed out two things. One, just like any other organization, and this is business as a whole, teams, companies, organizations, whatever they are, they don't want to pay for past production. They want to pay for is potential, my friend. So if they believe that you are either plateaued or possibly even headed on the downslide, it does not make sense to sign you to a huge deal. I think he'll be offered a deal that will be probably below the market rate. He will probably decline, and then he'll be told, how his other option is to pursue gainful employment someplace other than with this particular organization. So he'll have a decision to make at that point. But I do believe they'll stand their ground on this one.
Okay. So you think that CD will get signed, but not Dak? Does Micah get signed? By the way.
Well, if they sign, yeah, they can do two, right? If they do sign CD, who is not a quarterback, then they then have an opportunity to sign one other guy to a market-setting contract. That's why another reason I said I don't think it'll be both Rain Dakota Prescott and Mr. Lamb is that now if you have another superstar, you're going to have to let the other one walk.
Yeah. Okay. I have to ask you about the Steelers, of course. Of course, Harris is disappointed because he wasn't signed. That 50-year option there, the Steelers didn't pick it up, which I kind of expected, but I'm still, I'm still waiting for Warren to show that, that the job is his. As of now, the job still belongs to Harris. I'm still worried about our wide receivers. It seems my guy, the rookie, just sprained his ankle, and he's on a week-to-week basis. But Bill, what do you see happening with the Steelers this year? And I think I'd asked you before, does Van Jefferson make the final cut?
Yeah. So, stop me if you've heard this one before, James. I think they end up a couple games over 500. I think they'll still have some depth issues at a few positions. I do think that Russell Carrington Wilson has a big bounce back year. And while I don't think he wins comeback player of the year, he will get some votes. It sounds funny saying it as a Steelers fan, but I'm more concerned about the defense than the offense right now, James. We have one natural coverage player in the secondary that I feel good about. The others are all exciting in all the kinds of ways that I don't need excitement, and probably neither do most coaching staffs. So I could see one, maybe two players that were holdovers contributing a fair amount this year, but most of them won't. I think that there's a craft and a job that's ingenious enough, I think eventually they'll figure it all out. But yeah, they'll stumble around for a little bit, naturally. Russell Carrington Wilson is a guy that has been around the game a long time. He understands the game at a high level. He'll help people to figure things
out. All right. Okay. And lastly, I wanted to know, are you familiar with the work of Mr. Christopher Houck?
What was the last part of your question?
I said, are you familiar at all with the work of Mr. Christopher Houck?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I was having trouble hearing you for a second. Yeah, so the team and the challenge before them, as we've said.
No, I'm talking about Christopher, Mr. Houck.
Oh, okay.
The reason why I ask is because he's going to be our guest on our fantasy football show.
Right.
It's going to be on the 24th of August at
August 24th.
10 a.m. And Mr. Hawk, I just got the note back from him. He says, yes, it works perfectly. And the perfect Saturday after the Fantasy Expo conference in Boston. And before the UCLA Hawaii football game. So he will be our guest, Bill, you and I. Now, you have to make sure you keep that Saturday morning free. That's August 24th. That would be
So
one.
that is
That's 1 o'clock your time, right?
right.
Yeah. And of course, we will be drafting our sports league, I believe, later on that Saturday or the next day on Sunday. So that's something to look forward to, everyone. Our fantasy football show with Mr. Bill Carroll, and hopefully some of the other team will be here. Bill, give us your final thoughts for the evening, my man.
Well, I am excited and happy, as any true football fan is, about the fact that we are tantalizingly close to fake football. Well, I mean, it's not real football, but now I am a huge fan also of the CFL, and I won't say I'm a huge fan of the UFL, but I there's things I like about it. Some of the, I guess you call it the user interface parts of it. I've embraced and enjoyed, but my my particular final thought is something that I've often sort of has flitted through my brain and thought about. And obviously, especially with the Olympics upon us, uh, we had somebody sort of talk about the Olympic, the opening ceremony and the quote unquote controversy and all these other things. And it eventually just kind of blew over, and people realized most people, I guess, realized it was a nothing burger. And I think about what was done to both uh, John Carlos and Tommy Smith in 1968, which we obviously have discussed at least briefly on the show before. But those gentlemen essentially uh, almost lost their livelihoods. There were some death threats. Speaking of loss, they were it ended their their uh, track and field careers. Their ability to pursue track and field as amateurs ended on that day. Avery Brundage and that group that held for so long the Olympics in an iron fist, uh, rather unrealistically expected these young athletes to subsist on air, basically. Um, they weren't allowed to accept, sponsorships and endorsements, all these other things in those days. And once again, not that there was any money involved in what Tommy Smith and John Carlos did, but that they were supposed to keep, no politics, right? The whole and ironically, literally one Olympics later in 1972, tragically, politics revisits itself in a way much more dramatic and painful than two young black men raising their black glove clad fists into the air to protest injustice. So it is a fool's errand to take two things as culturally necessary to humans cohabitating with each other and living normal lives as politics and sports, and to say the two can't touch. Well, that's like, going to an Ethiopian restaurant and saying your food can't touch. It's going to touch. It's going to touch. You go to an Ethiopian restaurant, your food's going to touch. If you want
As for a knife and fork, right?
yeah, well, that shows that you don't know how to eat with it.
See,
That's how you tell them you don't
precisely.
know.
Yeah.
That's how they know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When you're waiting for for the waiter to bring your knife and fork, you know you're in the wrong place.
yeah, that's when you know you're not really an Ethiopian food person. But to my point, it is unrealistic and frankly silly to think you're going to keep sports and politics separate. And the whole shut up and dribble thing, especially in the age in now, right? The age of now, this time now, where you can call it athlete empowerment movement, you can call it whatever you want. And while we joke about how soft and whatever kids they are, to their credit, they won't shut up, right? I mean, say what you want about them, they won't shut up. They won't shut up and dribble. They won't shut up and tumble. They won't shut up and sprint. They won't shut up and bobsled. Whatever it is that they're passionate about, you're going to hear about it. It's going to be on their Facebook page and their Instagram page. It's going to be on their X/Twitter and whatever else, T-shirts, headbands, whatever it is. So while there are lots of things I do, like you, complain about this particular generation that's falling on behind me, to their credit, they don't hold their tongues when it comes to things they care about or concerned about. So to those that say, oh, we can't have politics or religion or sports touch each other or be involved with each other, I mean, balderdash. That is just the silliest of things. One is it's impossible to keep these things separate, even if you wanted to. And two, what would be accomplished, right? We saw what you did to Muhammad Ali. We saw what you did to John Smith and John Carlos and Tommy Smith, and many others. And none of them backed off. None of them stopped. I don't think it's ever going to. That toothpaste is not going back in the tube. That genie's not going back in the bottle. So get used to it, kids. If you don't like your sports touching your politics, your religion touching your sports, whatever it is, look away. That's my final thought.
Yeah, I think what's missing is that the interaction of today's youth is much more geared toward the modern technology. They don't have to physically march across the bridge in Selma. Yeah. They can do it on YouTube. They can do it on TikTok. There's so many ways that they can make their opinions known. And although it might not be in your face, as you say, Bill, they're there. And I'm really hoping that this election will be a change where we start seeing our elected officials get younger instead of growing old with me. So that's my final thought, So have a great night, everyone. Had a lot of fun tonight, Bill. Not a lot of times you and I just get to sit down and just talk and, whatever.
With the changes that have happened in my personal and professional life, I don't often have the ability anymore. I work harder and farther away than I used to, so I have less free time and less ability to talk sports like now. So I do appreciate it. I will unfortunately not be even available some weeks, but I will try to be here as often as I can.
No problem, but we definitely need your expertise in the fantasy football world.
I will make sure I'm there for that.
And as I was saying the last time we were on, thoughts and prayers go out to Mr. Mike Venerable, and we hope things are getting better along those lines. Safe travel to Dave and Sue. I believe they're somewhere in Iceland or Norway.
Somewhere like that, yes.
Somewhere around.
Mike Alberti, you're in our minds and hearts, and yes, everyone who is traveling, I want you all to. I send towards your ways traveling mercies, and that may the going be smooth, and may the returning be much anticipated, and know that you are loved.
Have a good night, everyone. We'll see you next week.
See you in a week.